Hello, 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 and welcome to this week's Marketing, Branding and Getting the Sale. Well, today we're actually talking about how to hire and keep the right team members. You might be wondering, why are we talking about this when we're usually talking about marketing and sales and that? Well, the thing is, this is such an important topic for your productivity and your profitability, and it will impact your sales, your client delivery, and everything really. Now, unfortunately, we're one short today. Stephen's been having technical difficulties. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to join us or not. He keeps trying, but we'll see. We'll carry on, just myself and Jess. So let's just quickly do some quick introductions before we dive into today's topic. So Jess, please introduce yourself for those who may not know you.
Hi, yes. Hopefully Stephen does get to jump in, but if not, we'll like I said, just carry on. So yeah, for those of you that don't know me, so what do? I help businesses stand out through the brand. So the market is getting ever more crowded, and there's more and more competition. Every time you turn a corner, you feel like competition is popping up left, right, and centre. To prevent you from blending into the crowd and instead standing out and winning more sales, explore my 6-step loyalty process. That can help your brand stand out and not only attract any old customers, but loyal customers that keep coming back for more.
Fantastic. And if you haven't met me yet, my name is Una Doyle. I'm a business strategist and coach, and my company is called Creative Flow. And I can help any established business owner to find an extra 50K or more, usually about 6 figures actually, in only 50 minutes. If you want to know how I can do that, excuse me, or have a chat to me about that, just send me a DM or comment 50K down below. And speaking of commenting below, do put a hashtag live if you're watching us live, or hashtag replay if you're watching the replay. And, please feel free to ask questions and make comments, even if you're watching on the replay, because we will come back and interact with you. We love to hear what people have to say and their questions. So yeah, looking forward to that. Okay, so let's dive into our topic today about how to hire and keep the right people. So Jess, what's your thoughts on, I said a little bit about why I felt this was important before we started. What's your thoughts on this? Have you kind of hired people, been working with other people? What's been your personal experience? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I unmuted, then unmuted myself. So yeah, my personal experience, I outsource and collaborate a lot with other people. So I'm always looking for potential joint venture partners, people to collaborate with, and it is tricky to find people that really blend with what I'm about, what my clients really need, what my process includes. So that's my personal experience with it. But also I help my clients around this a little bit as well in building that culture, because you need to build that internal culture as well as externally. So a lot of your brand, a lot of your marketing, you might feel it's very external. We're getting people outside of your business coming in, but we also need to make sure that people within your business are engaged, motivated, that they fit the pack, if you will, kind of fit the team. So building a culture around that really helps. So that's something that I help my businesses set up. And prevent any siloing, prevent any disconnection, and even when people are a one-man band or working by themselves, prevent that putting one hat on for one thing, taking that hat off, putting another one on. So if you're doing your sales, you get your sales hat on, you're thinking, right, okay, I'm doing these calls, I'm talking this is my script. Oh, I need to do some marketing. I'll take that hat off, put my marketing hat on. What can I say on Facebook now? Okay, I'll think of this post. And you're siloing yourself, you're distancing yourself from your message and your whole culture. So my kind of take on it is bringing it all together and having that internal culture as well as externally.
Absolutely. Well, as they say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Very true. Stephen has joined us. Stephen, can we hear
you?
I'm
so sorry. It's connection issues. I don't know what's going on. It's the browser. It's the browser.
It's all right. We can see you. We can hear you. It's all good.
Good.
Would you like to quickly introduce yourself for anyone who may not have met you yet?
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Apologies for being late. My name's Stephen Lerman from Chameleon BDS, Outsourced Business Development. So if you're looking to get in front of new companies, but you don't have the resource or don't like to or don't want to pick up the phone, you can please give me a call. We can have a chat and I can see what I can do to help you get in front of the businesses you want to.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephen. We've just been talking about why it's so important to hire and keep the right people. And Jess was just talking about culture. Like even when you're a solopreneur, you can still create a culture with the freelancers and subcontractors that you're hiring. You know, and of course, like with actual employed teams, then that's even more important. And I think, you know, the founder or founders of a business, they set that culture. It's so important. Well, one of the things I think for me is really, really important is that I can't talk about team stuff without bringing flow, the concept of flow into this story. So what I'd like to do, let's hope this works. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Yay, let's see. Woohoo, there we go. So we can see this. So this is one of the things that is really, really important, because flow, for a start, it massively decreases your costs because it's upping your productivity. So flow is this wonderful sweet spot between boredom and stress. And that's actually really, really important, because when you're in that flow state, that flow zone, you cannot be stressed in the same moment. And this is really, really important for, you know, for business owners and team members' well-being. As well as the kind of productivity and profitability of the business. So what do I mean by flow? Well, think about the last time that you just felt absolutely, you're on it, you're engrossed, you lose all track of time, you're probably enjoying what you're doing, having more fun, but at the very least, not hating it. And typically, you know, what has you in flow is actually you know, within your areas of natural strength and personality, it comes easy to you. Think about flow. Does flow and something feeling hard gel? No, it doesn't. Does it? Flow, if you think of a river flowing down the mountain, it always finds the easiest path. It's the path of least resistance. And that, you know, that sometimes jars with what people have learned about well, they've learned about, oh, you know, the kind of work ethic of everything must be hard. Well, actually, no. You can achieve so much more by focusing on the things that actually have you in flow. So how does this actually work? Well, this is the personality profiling tool that I use with my clients, and it's absolutely phenomenal in helping to identify a few different things. So number one is, what's the best business model for you to be conducting in your business? And this is absolutely critical, because if I've often found that when I start working with somebody, that they maybe just some tweaks to their business model, and boom, suddenly things just flow so much more for them. Okay, it makes a big, big difference. The second thing is about growth strategies. So for you or team members who are implementing growth strategies in your business, what is going to have them be most in flow? Is it like for me, it is totally in flow to be here today, doing this live video, you know, collaborating with Jess and Stephen. And this is just such fun for me. I love doing this every week. But it would be somebody else's idea of hell, you know, and is the last thing that they would want to do. So you've got to make sure that you're matching your growth strategies with, again, well, what is it that will come easy to you? What feels natural? And even if it might be something that you don't yet know how to do and you upskill, the learning curve is going to be so much faster when it's in your natural areas of strength. So let me just quickly, we don't have time today to go into all the profiles. So let me just look at the 4 fuels, as we call them, around here. So ignition is, this whole image is a compass, okay? So you can see we've got north, south, west, and east, okay? And we have these 4 fuels that make up this compass. And if you think about it, when you want to go on a journey, you get into your vehicle, you put the key into the ignition, you turn it, and guess what happens? It sparks the fuel. And that's what this is about. Like, what sparks your fuel? Okay. So yeah, absolutely. Chris, I see your questions. I'll come back to you in a moment. Okay, so Nova. Let's start here at the top. In the north, we have Nova fuel. So the engineer, astronaut, and pilot all have a lot of this. These are the big picture people who tend to be naturally creative and strategic. Not always artistic. They could be. So you've got somebody like Jess, who, is great at design, but also strategy. So Jess is an astronaut. Okay, so she's smack bang in the middle there with tons of Nova fuel. So what's really great about these people is that they're fantastic at innovating, and that's the real value that they bring. Now, in contrast to that, we have the people down in the south who have sensational fuel: the navigator, the expedition leader, the ambassador. And so what's really key for these people is that they're very grounded. They have their ear to the ground. They know what's going on in the marketplace. They're fantastic at building relationships with, existing clients, customer service. You often see these in hospitality and in the medical professions. Sensational people are brilliant at doing the detail. They love nothing more than having a plan to implement. They're fantastic at timing. And in fact, that's their real value. Whereas for Nova, it's all about innovation. For Sensation, it's all about the when. And sometimes the where and the when. And you often get these people also in retail, e-commerce, wholesaling. Okay? Because if you think about it, like a lot of it is about when to buy, when to sell. And that timing is really critical. When do you do different tasks in a plan? So they're just really good at doing that detail. But one of the challenges that they have is sometimes they get bogged down in the detail and they can't see the wood for the trees. Now, that's in direct contrast to the Nova fuel people, who often just don't see the detail. It's not that they don't care about it, but think about it. You've got an astronaut, you've got a pilot. These are, they're far up in the sky or even in outer space. When they look down at the planet, how much detail do they see? Not a lot. Whereas a sensational person is on the ground, looking people in the eye, seeing that detail. So let's look at the fuel, the Ys in the West. Okay, so the air traffic controller, the engineer and navigator all have Ys fuel. And these are the people who are more naturally introverted. Now, just to clarify, introverted is not the same thing as shy. Any profile can be shy. That's much more to do with mindset. But introverted people, there's two key things. One, they think and process information internally. So they're not going to speak until they're clear on what it is that they think. That's why they often want time to reflect on things. Okay, and before giving you an answer, my husband is an air traffic controller. If I want to talk to him about something, I usually give him 3 days notice. If it's a big important thing. So make sure you're doing the same. Don't put people on the spot when they have a lot of Ys fuel. The other thing about introverts is that they tend to recharge on their own. Now, for me, if I want to recharge, I'm quite likely to pick up the phone, go somewhere, meet people, just go and be amongst people even. And that will help me to recharge. And not always. I still need some time on my own as well. I don't want it to be like an all-you-can-eat buffet and all you do is eat and eat and eat and eat. We all have to digest. Just like introverts do need some time around people as well. It's not about them being 100% hermits. So the Ys fuel people, they're the ones who are very analytical. And it's that analysis which is really their superpower. And because they're able to look at data and whether that data is number, words, images, and they're able to analyze, they're able to edit, cut away what ought not be there, and get great insights about what to do with your business. In contrast, then, the exuberant people, these are extroverted people. They're the people, and their value is all about conversations. So whether those conversations are, a manager, interacting with their team, whether they're in sales, whether they're marketing, it's all about people. Okay. Now, extroverted people tend to think out loud, right? Not like the introverts who don't speak until they know what they think. I'm an extrovert. I'm a pilot profile. I sometimes don't know what I think until I've said it. Okay. So if you've ever had that kind of experience, perhaps you have more of this exuberant fuel and you think aloud. So just be careful if you sometimes think, oh my God, this person is rambling on. They're perhaps just thinking aloud and they haven't quite got to the clarity yet. So just go, okay, and that will help them along nicely. So the other thing about the exuberant fuel people is that the challenge that they often have is that they really need structure. And if they don't have structure within their role, within their business, it's really easy for them to fritter away all that energy. Think about some people you might have met networking, for instance. You get a lot of people with exuberant fuel networking, and they quite often hop from one group to another to another. But would you give them business? Not always. You might really like them, but for some reason, you just wouldn't give them business. Why? Maybe they're lacking structure, and somehow you kind of feel, oh, I don't know, they just seem a bit too kind of here, there, and everywhere. Whereas with the right structure, not only can they build amazing relationships and really enroll people into ideas and concepts, but you actually would have that trust there. Now, in contrast to that, for the wise field people, what they're often challenged with is change. They're often slow to change and very risk averse. And that's brilliant when you harness it in the right way in your business. But sometimes when overdone, that can cause wise field people to miss out on opportunities. Okay, so that's a whistle-stop tour of the 4 fuels, and then each of the profiles have a blend of one or more of the fuels. Well, we all have a blend of all of the fuels. It's just for some of them, they might be 0 or close to 0, but we always have a blend. And that's what makes us unique. But what's brilliant about this is that contrary to what some people might think about a personality profile, putting people into a box, that's not what this is about. This is about freeing you to be your true self. Okay, I'm just going to pause the screen share there and just come back. So both Jess and Stephen have done their profiles. So I'm just curious, like, what difference has that made to you in your business in knowing what to do? Stephen, let's start with you.
It's allowed me to focus a lot more. I mean, I didn't know how to label myself in terms of what profile I was. I know I'm not all about detail. I'm a very high level. You tell me I'm creative. I don't see it, but apparently I am. But it's allowed me to focus on my strengths. And then I know what I then need to do. When I'm looking at building my team, I now know who I need to go after in terms of recruitment so that will complement me. And it really has allowed me to focus, because up until that point, it was a little bit of, it was quite haphazard. But now I've got more of a strategy in place. It's allowed me to get to my end goal a lot quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something that something you said that's brought out one of the points that I wanted to share today, which is that, when you have a team, you want to be holding regular reviews. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I certainly did when I was employed way back when. The same things would come up in every review. And so if you're a manager or a business owner and you're finding the same things are coming up in a review as not being good, the chances are those things are just out of flow for that person. And a lot of the time, a role can be restructured so that they don't need to be focusing on doing those things. And in fact, that's kind of the first step that I want to talk about, which is, in order to hire and keep the right people, you need to make sure that your roles are aligned with these fuels, if not with specific profiles. And I think it makes a really, really big difference because, look, we can all be competent at things, but competency is not exciting to anybody. There's usually not a lot of room for improvement. And it's certainly not inspiring. Okay, it's not confidence building. Whereas when you have people working in their natural strengths and personality, then when they learn something new, then there's exponential opportunity for growth, for upskilling, for really be mastering something. Now, do you want to have team members that are masters at what they do, or who are merely competent? Okay. So if you structure your roles around, well, what's the top 1 to 3 accountabilities for this role, and making sure that they're aligned with the different types of people that I've discussed here, then can you imagine what difference that makes? Because I know when I worked in corporate, they had competency frameworks, and it literally was like being at a pick and mix selection. And they would kind of go, oh, let's have a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of that. Oh, a bit of this or that. Oh, that would make a really well-rounded person. Well, you can be a well-rounded person in terms of life experiences and, things like that. But, trying to create a well-rounded person who is great at the novice stuff and the sensational stuff and the wise stuff and the exuberant stuff, that just doesn't really happen. Those people don't exist. So you're setting them up to fail. Please don't do that. Set people up for success at the very beginning in how you actually structure your profile, structure your job roles. Okay. And then what that allows you to do, okay, second point, is that when you've done that, you can then write a job description, a job ad, right? The recruitment ad to target that particular person. Okay. Now, I know of a business who did this, and they said the quality of candidates that they got, boom, absolutely. They got so many more people that were that could be a perfect fit for the role that they were hiring for. And what's even better about that is when you really do that, you're also repelling the people who are not a good fit, because they're not going to be excited or inspired by the way that you're writing this. And just think about the personality types that I described. For someone who's got a lot of Nova fuel, you want to be talking about new, being at the cutting edge, always kind of learning new things. And, that's going to have to go, oh, right, this is really exciting. Whereas for a wise fuel person, they want stability and certainty. They're not going to want new things all the time. They want to know that they're going to have time to think and reflect and to analyze, and and how their insights will be valued. Because, a lot of the time, wise fuel people are denigrated in larger organizations because they sometimes are considered negative Nancy's. And but when you harness that in the right way, it's brilliant. But, if they feel like that in their current role, and then they're being told, oh, my insights are going to be valued in a job ad, like how appealing is that going to be for them? So you can really do that, get really clear on the role, set people up for success, and then follow that through into the advertisement to attract those right candidates. Jess, in what way have you been able to implement your role in your business?
For me, I've been working based off this compass for a few years now, haven't I? Like, obviously, like you're aware, because I've done it through you. But yeah, so naturally, I kind of have this structured flow naturally now every day. If I'm feeling unmotivated, I can quickly turn it around. There's very few days where I'll spend the full day kind of procrastinating, not doing anything. I'll always find something to keep that momentum going. So personally, from a one-man band perspective, that it's really helped me. But now it helps me even more in spotting these sort of traits in other people. So when I'm chatting to people about partnerships, when I'm meeting people, networking, when I'm talking to clients, prospecting for clients, doing sessions with clients, I can spot little traits to understand, okay, well, I know this is important for this person. So this is how I can communicate the proposal. This is how I can communicate throughout the process. This person would really enjoy that brainstorming time to think through things and do the brand together. Someone else would enjoy me doing it and coming in for a review and it being that quick pace. It's even laying my proposals out, all these different things. So for me, I'm naturally in this structured flow, and now it's kind of understanding it in other people, which has really helped. So yeah, and it does make a massive difference when you understand this much about your people. Like you've got two extremes. Brewdog was a brand that recently, over the past couple of years, got a bad reputation for not looking after their people. And how much did that damage the brand? And they had to, fix that reputation, fix that impression people had on the brand, and all the money that they'd spent on advertising, marketing, design, all that sort of stuff, that outward stuff, and they'd not concentrated internally. But then, flip side of the coin, you've got a brand like Netflix, who, really can take care of their customers, but also really take care of their people. There's a book that I'm listening to at the minute called Powerful, and it's about how the guys at Netflix created the culture that they created and how they kept people motivated, engaged. So it's truly important, and it can shoot your business sky high and your reputation sky high, and it can damage it no matter what else you've spent money on, no matter what else you've said. So yeah, hugely important.
Absolutely. And Chris earlier had put a comment which is actually very relevant to this. So I'm saying, I guess, outsource services and clients are part of your teams too. Yep, absolutely. An employer brand is important to outwardly promoting culture. And here's one of the things is that there's no good kind of a business creating an employer brand and then advertising it if it's not real. And actually I've had an amazing example of this just in the last few weeks. So one of my team members, they're a subcontractor that helps me with content and my podcast editing. They're leaving. They've got a brilliant job. I'm so happy for them and really proud of them. It's actually a bit emotional, them going. But when they told me, when they handed in their notice and they told me, they said, I said, oh, right, okay. So I said, okay, I'll have to think about what I do going forward. I was like, well, do I hire another subcontractor? Do I go to a business instead? So I was kind of, maybe even two separate businesses, one for the podcast stuff, one for content. And as I said that, she said, well, actually, she said, I have somebody in mind, a friend of mine, who I think would be a really good fit for the company. And so I was like, oh, great. Yeah. Introduce them to me. And they had, here's what's important, right? Like, it is important that you have people in flow, and it is important that, people have the right attitude. And quite often people will say, well, you get hire for attitude because you can train skill. You can. And in a bigger company, that's okay. But in a smaller company, you typically need people to be able to hit the ground running. So the great thing is that this person has got editing experience, and they started yesterday. And so my current team member is training them before they leave. And I'm just like, oh my God, what a smooth transition, what a smooth recruitment process. Because even though my employer brand is not something that I have publicized, it's just me and a very small team. But my team member had done that, and that was so powerful. That saved me a lot of time, and assuming they work out, I think they will, a lot of money as well, in trying to get to the right person, potentially making mistakes, all of that, because my current team member knew this person, this guy, he'd be a really good fit, personality wise. So it's really interesting how you can do that. Okay, so let's you've just been talking about Netflix and how they keep people. So we've talked about how to hire the right people. There's one other thing actually I just want to throw in here in terms of the hiring is please do test people in your interviews. Okay, so have some kind of exercise for them to do. Whether it's to present on something, whether it's, like what I've had people do is I literally have them go, I want you to watch this video, pull out some points. How would you write, what caption would you write, for one of those points from that video? Because kind of like, can they do what I'm asking them to do? And I did that with my new hire, and and if they totally messed it up, I might not have hired them. But they did a pretty good job. It's a few tweaks. I don't expect it to be perfect, but you've got to look at, is that ability there, to be able to do what's needed. So do make sure that you build that into your interviewing, and also you want to be asking behavioral questions. And what I mean by that is you want to be asking for, tell me about a time when you worked in a team and somebody wasn't pulling their weight. Tell me about a time when you disagreed with your boss, and what did you do? Tell me about a time when you did, kind of task one in your current role, and how does that go? How do you approach it? So that behavioral type questioning is also really important, because I think it's a lot of interviews. A lot of people don't know how to conduct interviews, and they end up just talking about the business and themselves and not really asking any questions, or they ask questions that it's really easy for somebody to perform very well in the interview and then not perform when they get in the job. You don't want that happening either. Okay, so in terms of keeping the right people, then, this is all about, for me, this is all about creating a culture of ownership. So if you've hired the right people, they want to perform. They are excited about doing this role. Yesterday in our team meeting, I outlined a kind of very specifically, like, okay, as part of it, here's the plan, here's our 90-day plan, where we've got to in it, you know, new team member, these are the tasks that you'll be doing to help us achieve the plan. You know, any questions? You know, obviously we getting trained. You know, I'll be doing some of it. You know, the current team member will be doing some of it. Any questions, any thoughts? And you know, and he just said, "Oh, I'm really excited to get stuck in. This all looks brilliant." And that's the kind of response you want. You want people who are prepared to take ownership, who are willing to take ownership. But sometimes people can be willing to take ownership, but they don't get to. Why? Well, because there's a lack of clarity of vision in the business, right? If they can't see, if they can't make a connection between their role and where the business is going and what they're looking to achieve, then, you know, they're kind of just going to feel like a cog in a wheel, but they've no part of a machine, but they don't really understand what contribution are they making. And I'm telling you, particularly when you are employing people who are in their 20s and 30s, they want to feel a connection. They want some meaning in their role. You know, one of the things that I do, in every team meeting is we actually reflect on, you know, the purpose of Creative Flow. Why does it exist? And that's really important to reconnect us all to that purpose. So that's happening every single week for me and my team members. You want to be doing the same with yours as well. So then you also need to make sure you've got real values. Okay. Now, what a lot of businesses do is, like, particularly in larger businesses, where they want people to feel included. And so they'll actually get people to kind of brainstorm values, and they'll have sessions with all the team members and things like that. That actually is not the best way to do it. So there's another way, which actually has to come from the business leaders. You know, you can validate with your team members and include them in that way. And I'm all for inclusivity and getting input for team members. But the trouble is, the way most people do this is you end up with something that's really watered down to the lowest common denominator, instead of looking at, well, you know, actually, you know, who are our best performers and what do they all have in common? What's the real values of what makes this company work? Okay. So that's really important as well. And then the final thing is about what I just mentioned in my team meeting is your plans. Okay. Plans where each person in the team has got specific accountabilities. And then meetings, kind of team meetings and one-to-ones, where you are holding each of these team members and they're holding each other accountable. Okay. So you're holding them accountable for achieving those tasks and responsibilities. I know I've just kind of gone with this. This is something I'm really passionate about, actually. I love helping business owners around this stuff because it just has such a critical impact on their business. And I remember one client I worked with, and when we started, in fact, I think before they even hired me, they said, I feel like I'm working for my team instead of my team working for me. And they were missing this kind of stuff. And they also hadn't hired the right people. So, and now they have a team that works for them. There has been some change in personnel, but it's all happened very naturally, and it just has worked. Because the great thing is that when you create that culture of ownership, poor performers do not like it and they leave. So if you're worried about kind of, oh God, I'm going to have to performance manage this person out of the organization, you know, if they're an actual employee versus a subcontractor, then typically you put this stuff in place and they'll go. I remember doing this with, did some team workshops with a business, and they had two people who were like emotional terrorists with the chaos that they got. Seriously, you know, one would constantly burst into tears, and the other one was doing a lot of kind of manipulation, trying to get what they wanted, to not do the work that they were hired to do and to do other work that they actually weren't well equipped for. And actually, as it turned out, were out of flow for. And they both left. So, you know, the company didn't need to go through a painful and sometimes at least time consuming, if not expensive, process of getting somebody out of the business that isn't a good fit. they were able to just put some of this stuff in place, and boom, bye. So yeah, Stephen, you look like you're about to say something there.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on so many interesting points. Accountability is huge. For one, I really do believe in accountability. You touched about the role itself, and if the role's going to change over a period of time, because you want people, great team members will grow with the business, and the role might change, the role might adapt. They can get a lot more involved. The team meetings that you constantly have encompasses everything, because if you leave somebody to their own devices, the chances are A, they're not going to do very much. B, what you think's happening is not actually happening, and you end up taking a backward step. So if you're hiring, you ask these questions at the very beginning, and like what you said about asking them to do something, how they would what you said, well, there's a situation, how do you deal with it, how would you cope with it, how would you fix it? All these things are, for a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, that they've never come across before. It actually can be quite daunting, to get all these things in place. I mean, I've made some bad hires, because I didn't do the fundamental thing, ask them to do something, to prove they can do it, and I didn't, and it cost me a lot of time, and it actually probably cost me one client. So yeah, everything you said is so valid. It honestly, and you just need to, if you're going to do it right, you got to do it properly. Probably do it right, and just take your time and make sure that you are thorough in the process of getting that right person. And if they do happen to leave, and because they know what's expected of them, they may be able to recommend somebody like this person's recommended for you, because they know exactly what's expected of them, and it saves you a massive job, because you're so busy. It saved you a massive job.
Totally. I was so delighted. And
That's
also,
amazing.
I did also feel kind of quite warm and fuzzy, because I was like, oh, wow, they want to recommend a friend, that they've enjoyed, working for me. And
because they've got you. They've understood it. They were in flow.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's really interesting, actually, because the person I've hired is a different profile to the person that's leaving, and but there were some things I wanted to do differently around my content, and actually it's going to work really well with this person. Plus, I can get them to do some other stuff that the original team member would have been totally out of flow doing. So because I'm a small business, I have actually changed the role slightly, but I want people to be really careful here. What you should not ever do is change a role to suit the person when it's not in the best interests of your business. Now, I did do this, but it is totally in the best interests of my business. And I'm actually excited about how this is going to help me to achieve some more things. And this person will be very in flow doing those things. And so the person who's leaving is an astronaut profile. The person I'm taking on is, I'll just bring the thing back up. The person I'm taking on is an ambassador. And so we've got someone who is very creative, lots of ideas, really good at kind of coming up with all that content, text and stuff. Now, I work with them, like all the posts that go out, they're all my thoughts, right? But I get them to help me because I'm too busy to do it all. But this person, we're going to change things. So I'm going to be doing a YouTube first strategy. And so I'll create the YouTube video, and then what they're going to be doing is actually editing, snipping, kind of taking what I've already created and just rewriting it. So they don't have to be as creative as the other way that we were doing content. But what they are also going to be able to do is help me kind of with more community building type tasks, which would have been totally out of flow. I know from what we've done before was totally out of flow for my original team member. And so it's interesting, but that's going to help me to change the way that I want to do something, because I want to build my YouTube channel. Apologies, LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, but YouTube is a search engine, right? It's not a social media platform. It's a search engine. and the content that you create there stays there. And if you've got good content and it gets viewers, it can work for you for years and years and years. It doesn't quite work the same way here. You know, the lifespan of content that we create on social media is not very long. You know, it can be a matter of hours for some platforms. LinkedIn's a bit longer, thankfully. You usually get at least a week or two. So yeah, so it's interesting how you can, you know, flex things to suit your business. So Jess, any final thoughts or questions from you?
Yeah, a lot of businesses that I speak to, a common thread that comes about is an uncertainty, a doubt, kind of a fear around employing people, because they've either employed the wrong person for the wrong role and it's not worked, or they've not got any momentum or engagement in the team that they've already got now, whether they've outsourced something and they've been burnt because they've been spending money and not getting much in return. So a lot of business owners and business leaders are in this position where they're like, I've been there before, I've employed for this and it's not worked, I've outsourced for this and it's not worked. And then that fuels that stress, that micromanagement, and then that doesn't get anyone anywhere. And then there's a lot of fear that still gets held onto this kind of subject. So for the people that are carry on watching and still thinking, I'm still a bit scared to implement this because I've tried to do it before and it's not worked, or that I've got this doubt and uncertainty about all of this, what kind of advice or thing would you say to them to help them make that next step in changing the way that they employ and changing the way that they engage with the employees?
Well, there's a lot of different factors that go into, like I've touched on kind of some of the major factors of how to hire and keep the right people. There's a lot more to it as well. Like I've talked about clarity of vision and real values and having plans. Like I said that in one sentence, but that requires quite a bit of work. So I think one of the key things I would say is please build these foundational things into your business. That's number one. Number two is that there are times if you do not believe in yourself and in your business enough to sometimes take an educated risk and invest in yourself, invest in team members, invest in the growth of your business, then things are never going to change. And I understand if you've been burnt before, it can be hard to do that. But I'm just thinking of one client in particular who they'd hired a team member, a family member as a team member, and it did not work out. Not because they didn't get on, though dysfunctional teams is a whole other topic. So it wasn't that they didn't get on, is that they didn't have the foundations in their business. They had no clarity. They just knew, I want help. Oh, my sister's going to help me out. Great. And so they hired them for X many hours a week, but they didn't know what they were going to do. They had no idea. They just knew, oh, help with this, help with that. And so that lack of clarity on the role, and also not having the foundations that they were actually still having they were still going through this feast and famine roller coaster. So now that didn't work out, and they were so scared to hire people. Oh my goodness. Like, you know, and so they did it. I got them to do a Kickstarter first last year when that scheme was on. It didn't quite work out, but they could see why it didn't work out. And then they hired somebody else to do the same role instead. And now they've hired other people to help. It's an e-commerce business. They make their own products. They've now helped people to help produce the products. And I helped them to put in place the right kind of elements so that they were able to hold people accountable. So people had real clarity on what they needed to do to be successful. And, you know, and it was such a different experience for them. They still had to take that leap though. So even with that help and support, I couldn't do it for them. And they actually took several months to do it. And they lost out on the extra time that they would have freed up for themselves, and, you know, the extra profits that they're able to make, because then they're able to focus on, you know, income generating activities for the business instead of getting bogged down in the details that can be easily done by somebody else, as long as you got the right person in the role. So yeah, there are, when it comes down to it, you need to take the leap of faith, but make it an educated and supported leap of faith by having the foundations in place and clarity on all these elements. And I'm happy to talk to anyone who's feeling like that, because it's when I see businesses that are stuck, that have been the same place for year after year after year, it's often because they've held back from making these investments, whether it's a team member or maybe investing in a company like Stevens, to kind of do the lead generation for them or whatever it might be. It's quite often what's going on here that's causing the problem. Has that answered your question, Jess?
Yeah. I just wanted to reassure people that maybe had that bit of, oh, I don't know, it's really uncomfortable. What do I do next in simpler terms? So having them foundations and having them foundations and building up that structure gives you the confidence to then make that educated leap. So yeah, all makes sense.
Absolutely. And the thing is that you don't want to be making a leap that might sink the ship. I'm mixing metaphors here, but you know what I mean. So if you've got the right foundations in place, then if you do make a hiring mistake or outsourcing mistake, then it shouldn't sink the company. It might affect your profits for a few months. It might affect your time for a few months, but it's not going to, it's not going to make so much of a difference. Especially if you cut things fast when they're not working out. I think that's the other thing I see people doing is that they keep staff members that are costing them time and money and that are actually affecting other people so much. That can be a big problem. I remember once talking to a company owner who we were having this kind of conversation, and he said, "Oh yeah, I got rid of somebody last year, and I really should have fired them 6 months earlier." And I said, "How much do you think that cost you?" And he thought about it and he worked out and he said, "At least 50 grand, probably a lot more, but I reckon it cost the business 50 grand by having this person in the team because they so badly affected everybody else, let alone specific mistakes that they made." So Chris just asking, where's the best place to attract quality people then? That's a great question. I think one of the best places is through current employees, like the experience I had, for sure. And a lot of larger companies, they actually have incentive schemes that when you bring somebody on, you get some kind of a reward. So that's one way of doing it. I think the other thing is depending on like the size of business that you have, if you can afford it, use a recruiter. They have a pool of candidates. And if you've got the right kind of role and you're using the right kind of language and how they're advertising that role, that can be great. There's all the online platforms, Indeed and is it Monster Jobs and things like that.
Jobs, Monster Jobs.
Yeah. So there's those kinds of places as well for for hiring actual employees. And then you've got the platforms like Bark and the kind of freelancer platforms. Jess, you're probably more familiar with those than me. What else is there?
Yeah, there's one that's actually called just freelancers, I think, and you can just there's just like freelancers on there. So yeah, there's plenty of things like that as well.
Yeah, and don't discount social media. If you've got a reasonable size following, or you tag a few people who do in the comments, if you've got an exciting to the person, it doesn't have to be exciting to you, but exciting to your prospective employee or contractor. You have that description in there, then that can work too. And also you can use that to eliminate the wrong people. So like a great thing to do is to put something in the job ad that says what they need to do. And you can even do things like say, please put X in your subject heading, like some random word that they wouldn't ever put in the subject heading other than if they properly read the description. So you can do things like that to make sure that you're getting people who are switched on and paying attention. The amount of times I've seen people advertising for contractors and they will say, email your whatever to this email address in the post. And then there's people commenting going, how do I apply? It's like, read the flipping post, So yeah. So you can put little things like that to kind of help weed out the people who aren't serious or just aren't capable of doing the job that you want them to do. So what's been the thing that jumped out at you most in what we talked about here today, Stephen?
I think one of the things was the accountability, and having the regular team meetings, because that way you're always going to keep your finger on the pulse and make sure that your people are happy, know what they're supposed to do, and that they're in flow with you and the business. Because otherwise, if you just, ignorance isn't always bliss.
No.
And I say to my freelancers, talk to me all the time, ask questions. If you're not sure, I want to know, because I'm going to assume you know what you're doing, and if you don't, there's going to be a problem down the line. So, I've just started to implement this regular team meetings that you've talked about, so we're all on the same page and we know what we're all doing, which I think is just so important.
Brilliant.
So, thanks for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Jess?
Understanding people and their profiles, I'd say is a huge point, because there's a lot of businesses that fall into the trap of overloading people with different kinds of jobs, finding people that are just like themselves, all this sort of like mindset. So understanding people and communicating off the back of what Stephen says, keeping that line of communication open, because that's such a crucial thing. When that's not there, people feel isolated, distant, and they start looking somewhere else. So understanding people so you can keep that line of communication open.
Absolutely. And there's some brilliant technology now as well that can help you to do all this stuff. So have a task management system. If the task management system doesn't have like a chat facility, then you can use things like Slack for that. So yeah, just trying to keep the communication instant messaging rather than email, and being able to comment on actual tasks and see the progress of tasks as they kind of move through a Kanban board in different lists, or even just status updates, whatever way you manage things. I think the visibility is really important. And so for me, I think one of the key things is about creating that culture of ownership and accountability. And one thing I didn't mention actually is, I've worked on major change programs for large organizations, like we're talking 14,000 staff, where I've been communicating and help managing change. And there's a lot of employee engagement ideas and processes out there. I kind of feel like a lot of that stuff, if you hire and keep the right people and create that culture of ownership, you don't need to do employee engagement programs per se, because it's just all integrated into the way you run your business. And I think that's something that's going to, have your business be more profitable and achieve its goals faster, and have happier team members that aren't sitting there going, oh God, here's the latest employee initiative. Heard it all before. I'm getting more and more cynical every time, something happens, we are exposed to something like this, because it's just actually not in line with what the company is really about, and they haven't created a great culture. So yeah, I know this has been a longer than usual live, but as you can see, there was a lot to cover here. I want to know, what's been most useful for you? What's new to you? What are you going to go and implement, even more importantly? Or any other questions that you have, please comment below. Let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Okay, and that's all from us for today. So we're going to say bye for now, and we will see you same time next week.